Hello, good evening, and Happy New Year, everybody. It is wonderful to get another one of these nighttime podcasts out there for you beautiful listeners. I should retract that statement. Some of you are probably hideous looking, but hey, I still appreciate you, don't worry. It's a new dawn, it's a new year, and I'm glad to have gone at least 5 of these podcasts in the can in 2020. Let's see if we can even double that this year. But today's film topic is brought to us by a young Ridley Scott and Paramount Pictures, and based on a short story by Joseph Conrad, which is based on a ridiculously true story in history. This is The Duellists, an epic on smaller scale proportions, and today I'm joined again by Headshot LLC alumni. Jerry Jensen is on the show.
Your duty is to victimize me. Am I mistaken? You have chosen to hunt me out in the drawing room of a lady toward whom I feel the deepest...
I respect your inexpressible sentiments. But I can assure you that the hunting was no choice of mine.
You have insulted me. You have insulted me!
I have strained my patience in order not to do so.
And I demand an apology.
This is too ridiculous.
Really too ridiculous. A proper general's poodle. Can you fight?
I see no reason whatever for us to fight.
What reason would you like? Shall I spit in your face? Shall I cut a chunk out of your backside, or would that be too ridiculous? How do you get back to your general now? Through the window?
I believe you're really quite a madman.
You draw your sword.
Jerry!
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Jerry, glad to have you back on, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. I actually love coming on your show. We don't get many opportunities to do a deep dive into an older film nowadays. Everybody wants to talk about new films. I love coming on your show.
Yeah, especially in the past year where nothing new was really that great. Anyway, it's good to just kind of reflect on older stuff.
The year of dead films. Everybody did that thing where they're like, these are the movies I watched this year. And I thought most of those movies looked like shit, so I didn't watch them. And I was going to say the best movie I watched this year was The Duellists and Rocky.
Rocky, okay. Yeah, it's been a few years since I watched Rocky again, but great film. Wonderful film.
So, holds up. It's my Christmas tradition. I watch Rocky every year.
Sweet. I'm working on a top 10 of 2020. It's going to be a very sad list when it comes out, but no, The Duelists, this was a film I had not actually seen until you brought it up recently. It's been on my radar for so long. I've seen clips from the film, but I've never actually watched it in full. And, I'm already, about to die on that hill and say that it might be Ridley Scott's best film, but it's only if I watch more of his filmography just to get a sense of where he was coming from as a director. But, yeah, I'm excited to talk this movie a little bit in depth.
I think in full context, it's gotta be his best film, because this is coming right out of, doing however many hundreds of commercial ads. It's his first film. He had the most restricted budget. He had the least faith in him from other people going into it. He would have had to, just like any new person in the field, you really have to demonstrate that you're capable and you can't fuck up. You can't slip anywhere or you're going to lose your opportunities. And the fact that this movie hits the way it hits, and other films in a lot of ways might do something similar, don't feel like they have the same staying power as this film. Or 30, 40 years later, I'm sitting here telling you it's genuinely one of my favorite films of all time. And there are plenty of films that have tried to do similar things since.
Yeah, I'm getting the sense Paramount was putting just immense pressure on this guy. $900,000 was his budget, just under $1 million, and that alone says you can't even show off the Napoleonic Wars in full motion. You have to kind of hide it a little bit and tinker with some of these scenes to give it that weight, that epicness, but also still refrain from showing off too much. And as a first-time director, this guy was working on short films and commercials and stuff before then. But I mean, as your debut, not only the pressure shows, but just the amount of quality and attention towards the period, it's really quite something. Watching it in full, I was just, I don't know, it took me back. I was whoa, this is a new epic I've never seen. in quite a while. I was really impressed with what they pulled off, and learning some of the behind the scenes mistakes that were made in the course of the making of the film only added to just what I love about the Duelists.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned other Napoleonic epics, because if you would think of a film like Waterloo, where you see hundreds of extras in a single shot, and you can imagine the logistics of filming something like that it might take 2 or 3 days to get this 10-second shot, because of all of the people have to do, the horses, and they need their pyrotechnics to go off and all this other stuff. And you think about the Duelists still giving you the feeling of that epic war going on, this rise and fall of Napoleon going on in the background. But because they don't have $1 million to show everything, they have to just sort of show you a few cannons, show you some soldiers, narrate a little bit, and then put you right back into the mindset of these two guys. And it expands out of not just that they can't show you the war and they still are managed to give you the war, they can't show you all of France and the traveling that they basically have a few sets, some fields, an underground barn out in the middle of the snow, some more fields. That's the whole film. Everything takes place right there. So they can't travel the world and show you landmarks. They have to just film what these guys are doing, and they do it so perfectly. Ridley Scott's eye is just beautiful.
Yeah.
The natural lighting. There's a story he tells of tracking the last shot in the film, just to talk about composition without getting too detailed in the plot. And it's that scene where Ferreau is standing, he's taking that shot that's like the fall of the Napoleon Empire, where it's a painting of Napoleon standing out on the hill looking over France, and he walks in the frame and fills the frame up the same way the picture does. And the sun actually peeks perfectly out from behind the clouds a couple of times as he's making motions, Harvey Keitel. And one thing I thought was super interesting was, in my brain, I'm thinking modern filmmaking. That's probably not the sun. That's done in post, right? They've like rotoscoped the sun, and they've managed to get the sun in here for the shot perfectly. Ridley Scott says no. Every shot that you see there that has what you might call perfect lighting is the result of him sitting in that spot for days and days with a watch, looking at the angle that he wants until the sun comes through, and being, this is how we do it. So between 2 and 5 o'clock that we're walking up this hill, and if the sun comes out, that's our scene. If not, we are back tomorrow. And it's those things where you see they're not blasting LED lights through windows to get natural lighting. They're just out there at noon. They're really using the sun and the real lighting in the areas. It's so beautiful.
I miss those strenuous days working sets, waiting for that golden hour moment for the sun to kind of come out. Now, that's a great shot. It's funny how so many people think that's the final shot of the film, but it does end on Harvey Keitel's face, like last minute, like giving off this look that he's like, oh man, I've got to like really look at myself in the mirror for once and figure my shit out. Mm-hmm. But no, absolutely, it shows just like the actual, just the natural quality that Ridley Scott was really kind of going for in this film. And it takes you back to like the French new wave sort of stuff, where it was everything's got to be as practical as possible. Get that sunlight in there. We're throw that that Kino light out the window. We're not using that today. I love when directors, especially on their first outings, like go for as visceral and as real as they can, and this movie definitely showcases that for sure. I did want to kind of divert this a little bit, but ask what is it about the movie that made you really want to reflect on it again, or I guess when did you first see the film, and what did it mean to you at the time?
I think I probably saw the film for the first time when I was maybe 14 or 15. Like sort of accidentally. I don't know what the name of the channel was, but there's a TV channel that I had that would just play films, and I think I caught them from the middle to the end and then had to rewatch it a couple of weeks later. And it's just that thing where I kind of got the message immediately, and it really resonated with me in both characters. And that, like Harvey Keitel, I kind of get being that stubborn, bullheaded guy that's dedicated to this specific goal that maybe is toxic to him and toxic to the people around him, but he's set his mind to that goal. And I definitely kind of understood and identified with Keith Carradine, and that he felt like he was being dragged into somebody else's life, and it was, you know, breaking apart the established foundation that he liked and wanted, while secretly also enjoying being pulled down into that hole. Like that's one thing where Hubert has the good life. He has a high rank. He has a woman that likes him a lot. He appears to be able to marry, or like he's going to be able to marry her at some point and remove her from her station and move her up. And they like work perfect for each other. And as that relationship starts to break down, rather than having scenes of Hubert in these humiliating moments, he's crying, "Oh, my life is ruined," he almost misses that and doesn't pay attention to it, because he himself is focused on this fake fight for honor. So I got a lot of the like emotional impact that was tried to be given to me almost immediately from both characters. And going back once you attach to the film in some way like that, and you could just look at the scenes without needing to follow the plot, it ends up just being a beautiful film. You get to 2020, theaters are dying. Big blockbusters look like they're probably also going to die soon. More movies are going to have restricted budgets, and you see this dude made this film with less than $1 million, and it is nearly perfect everywhere. So I figured it's time to go back, time to watch it, compare it to what I'm seeing now, especially in the historical area, and really just breathe in that refreshing artistic take on first and foremost minimalist films, and second of all period piece films.
That's been Jerry's PSA for the day. Make sure you breathe in all of the classics of the 70s.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it is very remarkable. I didn't know going in that the film was going to primarily focus on Dubert and really the psychological toll that this whole endless spiral of duels takes on him. There's moments in the film where you see like he's not even his mouth is quivering just out of fear that like either he could die or this could not end well on his end. But you know just that crippling sort of like fear that something is gonna go wrong regardless. And at the same time, like he gets that very dark-seated thrill out of it too, because it's like his only other purpose in life is to keep doing this for a little bit while. But then he has to kind of come at the very end, at least. We are going to spoil this movie as we're talking about it in depth, but has to put it to an end as well by the end of the fifth duel. And it's such a crazy sort of ride between these two guys. Again, you have one who's just very hot-headed, very ignorant, very just a bit of a buffoon in some ways, you know, just doesn't seem to really care about like his stance on things. And you got another guy who's very much more dignified, really seems to want to really believes in Napoleon and really wants to like do his job as an officer and work his way up in the ranks. And then these duels serve as like this very very dark distraction from everything that's sort of going on. And you see how that not only affects them, but the people around them as well. Again, he's got it good. He's got a wife at this point, and he's raising a family. And it's like Fro just keeps jumping into his life, and it's like, oh man, we gotta do this shit again.
You can see when you talk about the fear from Dubert. Their names are impossible for me. I'm already terrible at anybody's names, let alone actual authentic French names, so I'll get it wrong a million times. But you can see on Dubert's how you're talking about his like actual lips quivering, the shivering fear that he has, all the way in the scene of the charge, when Ridley's pressing in tight on him and he's sat on the top of his horse, and he's genuinely terrified right there, Keith Carradine. And it starts that really almost, what's the word? Almost like a trippy sequence. It reminds me of like Jacob's Ladder or something, where it's match cutting this backflash. He's seeing his life go through his like flash before his eyes. There's that really disturbing music that's playing the whole time, and then the charge begins, and the charge is so ridiculously fast too. Like on camera, they're really gunning at each other. There's so much anxiety in that, and it's portrayed so well that you, even though they're doing all this match cutting, even if it was just a push in and they took that stuff out and you just saw that emotion on his face, it tells so much of the story. Keith Carradine does such a good job. It tells so much of the story, and you see him go from, you know, brave, honorable to now terrified yet still honorable in just those few moments. There's so many shots like that you can understand a lot of the character's emotions just from looking at him. And Dubert has such a tragic sort of arc, you know, again, because he loses just as much as Ferreau does, but in a different way. Before you find out Ferreau's an amazing general, he ranks up quickly, people tend to respect him and listen to him, and then obviously by the end he's lost that, but still you discover that he's going to get beheaded, he's going to get shot or whatever it is, he gets arrested. Dubert has to save him, you know, demonstrating that kind of like that weird frenemy thing that they have going on. And that stuff is so well executed that it doesn't seem like, well, why would he save him? He was just afraid of him getting his head cut off by the guy. But you learn, it's like they're secret friends. They love, hate each other. This is a real relationship that actually happened. I won't say the guys' names because I can't say the dudes' names, but there are two guys that fought, I believe, just before the Napoleonic Wars constantly. They were enlisted. They would write letters to each other. It was like, haha, I'm glad to see you've grown a new rank in the army. However, we're set to duel in 2 days and you'll die on that day. So enjoy your rank soon. I love you. Have a good day. Like, that's the letter they would write to each other. And they would stab the shit out of each other and cut each other. And then, oh, you're injured? All right, well, we'll just hold it off until next time. Either one could kill the other one and win the duel. But they kept just stopping. And it goes on for 20 years or so until the end of the film is actually how it happened. So it's cool to see that portrayed and you understand it and it kind of feels real.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is based on a true story, also adapted from a Joseph Conrad novel as well, which, or short story, but definitely you can see all of those influences taking place. What I find very fascinating too about this story, at least the true story that has transpired over time, is that it was so over the top that the movie felt like it had to actually cut down a little bit and say like, this is like too wacky and weird for the time. We're gonna tone this down just a little bit. We're gonna show maybe just 5 duels that happened during the Napoleonic era, and we'll just see how that plays out. Because the true story is actually really, really fascinating. And I think when moments like that happen, you know, movies like, oh, that's, you know, I love that sort of attention to the spirit of something that's just so over the top and crazy, but, you know, giving it a much more layered sort of thematic appeal.
It's weird to think that, because even in writing a scene where someone goes to the store, you think about, okay, what's realistic about going to the store? What would really happen? And what would happen in a movie? You know, what can I lie about a little bit? And when you have this particular story, there's no you don't have to fudge anything. You actually have 2 guys that are locked in a heated, bitter battle to, well, almost the death, like entirely based on an actual existing form of honor, practicing something that's completely legal that went on until the 1960s commonly. It's fucking insane.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. How it comes about. Yeah.
Ferreau has been boasting all day, but the betting still holds at even money.
Going to be killed. Responsibly, on horseback. As a compliment to the cavalry.
That's a useless sort of talk.
Gilles, I'm not fanatical enough to persevere in this absurdity. If he so earnestly desires to kill me, he will kill me.
Damn it, kill him!
It's absurd.
Let's talk about the cast here for a second too, because this is Keith Carradine and Harvey Keitel in these leading roles. They originally, Ridley Scott wanted. I watched one of the director's commentaries, but he wanted Michael York and Oliver Reed originally, and Paramount was like, no, not happening. We got to cast some of these American guys. Which originally you think makes some sense because these are trained swordsmen and actors. They were in The Three Musketeers a few years prior. But the job that these two guys do, Keith Carradine and Harvey Keitel, they deliver immensely well. I think they trained, at least they did a little saber training and all this stuff before they initially shot those scenes. And, we can get into their American accents and everything like that in the midst of this, what we assume to be France, but
right.
but they did a good job.
Americans doing English accents, being in France. Oh, amazing.
It's absolutely beautiful. But I was never bothered by that because I think I would prefer that they would talk in their native accents just to at least give off the performance that's required of them.
Yeah, and thankfully they're both really good actors, and the voices they're doing aren't terrible. I watch Italian films on occasion, so I'm used to everybody in a film having completely different accents, and this guy's ADR'd in English or whatever. That didn't necessarily bother me, but trying to follow whose name is what was so hard for me because I didn't know who was saying a name or who was saying a word. Oh man, it was frustrating. So I had fucking IMDb open the whole time. Like, that guy is this guy. This is how you say it. Like, the Keith Carradine, Harvey Keitel kind of combination is, and this is something Ridley Scott said, do you really feel that way? It feels like in actors you find those characters also. Keith Carradine does seem like the guy, because they're fighting with full weight sabers that are real, that are just dulled as much as they could get them dulled. And this is something that they fought over. They really wanted to have real weapons. And Ridley Scott was saying, like, no, I don't want to do that because you'll die if you fuck up. And they're like, no, it's fine. It'll make the movie better if we die. And then so they would fight with real sabers, and the handguards alone are not enough to really protect your hands. I've done like a Filipino stick fighting, and it's called a screama, and you get your hands jacked up so quick. Even on little training sticks, your fingers and hands will get jacked up. So there's some legitimate danger there. And there's a story of Keith Carradine saying, oh, well, I don't know, Harvey Keitel's never done any choreographed fights before like this. I want to make sure he stays on his mark so we don't get hurt. And Harvey Keitel legitimately saying, fuck your marks, let's have a sword fight. And you feel like that is really those characters, where one guy is prim and proper, this is how it's done, and the other guy says, I don't care, we're fighting. If someone gets killed, someone gets killed. So you really find those characters in those actors. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it doesn't ever shy away from that kind of realism. I think it shows like all of it in full over the course of the film. Again, these two actors really kind of get into the nitty gritty. Like when some of these fights transpire, there's sweat protruding from them. There's blood. At one point, like the third duel, like Keith Carradine, his shoulder gets like nicked, and it's like the most, in a weird way, just like the most graphic like sort of image to see. Where like, oh shit, this guy's still going for it even when like everything's going down. I miss that kind of commitment when some actors would just have no fear, no problem, like really just kind of like going for it and really just messing themselves up. Everybody looks so slick and proper and fine nowadays, and it's like, let's bring back those grungier times of of just like earthy filmmaking.
Look at any period piece nowadays, and just about everybody in it is really sexy. Every character is super sexy. I've actually been a big fan of The Crown. I just finished the 4th season of that recently. And because they're trying to portray real people, they have a bunch of real, normal people in it. So there's all these moments where the characters are all ugly and they're not supposed to be sexy. You're not supposed to be turned on. And I'm finally feeling turned on by the thing. I'm like, yes, this is good, you know? And that's the thing that the Duelist has, is that Keitel and Carradine aren't two sexy guys. I mean, they're not ugly, you know, they don't have their face pushed into boiling water or anything. But it's not about look how sexy these dudes are and how they get women. It is just about this intimate fight. So when you have their saber battle underground, the third one, and it cuts to, you start in the middle of the fight. They're already jacked up and sweating. It's a very intimate fight because they are tired and they are grungy and they are dirty. And you feel like the actors are really that tired. There's not much acting
out of breath.
here. This is, a natural exhaustion going on. That it comes from an effort that you really don't get from, not to say somebody, because you're attractive, you don't put in the effort or whatever. But I really feel like there's a, let's say like a privileged actor class of sexy actors that work in period pieces that never have to endure that type of scene. Underground, in the mud, maybe it's raining and it's, you know, a lot of physical, and what's that kid's name? Kit Harington has never had a scene that hard. They took care of him on Game of Thrones, right? That one scene in The Duellists is harder than anything Kit Harington had to do. And it's truly, you feel how exhausted and how much work goes into these fight scenes. You really do. It's one of the most believable hand-to-hand classical scenes, I think. Well, any of the duels, they are very extremely believable because the choreography is just enough to look real and just enough to be cinematic, plus real people are doing it, so they're exhausted already. It's beautiful. I keep saying it's beautiful and amazing at the end of every point that I make.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's like the best word you could probably use for so many aspects of this film. You're never gonna see Gal Gadot rolling around in the dirt or something like.
No way. It'll be mud and post, or the thing that I hate, and I see it all the time, is obviously smeared, where the mud has the gaps from people's fingers, and it's right here perfectly underneath the eye, because you don't want to get dirt in actor one eyes. I'm pretty sure that Harvey Keitel almost gets his throat slit early on in the film. Or actually, no, excuse me, the first duel that happens, the one that starts it, Harvey Keitel, almost kills the actor that is playing the mayor's son. Because even though his foil is bent and he's supposed to make contact and it'll look like it's making contact initially, when he made that thrust, he was lifting his blade a little bit. So the point, rather than being pushed down by, being pushed down by dude's body, the point actually hit his body directly on and had to get pushed down by Harvey Keitel's horse. He almost killed a man on set.
Well, first off, that first opening duel is also really quite a good way to kind of get the viewer really involved in this story. I chuckled a little bit because I think the budget sort of shows a little bit where when he makes that stab, you can kind of tell it's just stabbing through his cloth and not really through his body. But you give it a pass. Hey, what can you do? It's whatever. Yeah. But that speaks a lot to a lot of the really authentic sword fighting, or even some of the other sort of just action-driven duels that happen throughout this film. It's again also very down to earth. I think we're seeing these days just these overly choreographed like sword fights in films, and maybe that even takes place from theater in the past as well. But I don't know I forget the name of the choreographer who did this, but he did the sword choreography on one of my other favorite films, Rob Roy, with Liam Neeson and Tim Roth. And part of what makes that film so compelling, to me at least, is I love that final fight because it shows like one guy who's just like who knows how to fight and another guy who's just so like stubborn and like overconfident and thinks like he can like get the upper hand, but the whole time the fight is just this ongoing just sludge of just sweat and out of breath and crazy sort of emotions cycling between these two guys, and it's never like over glorified. It's never like, oh, I'm just like the perfect fencer, I can hack and slash as I please and never like bat an eye. But like, no, these guys are like tired. These guys are like trying to survive. I'm that element to me I think is so intense, and it's what makes the Duelists, I think, when they have those saber fights, when they have those little duels. you're in it. It's like it looks just so real. And in fact, even the camera at points, like when it goes handheld, you're like in the moment. I think that's what also really kind of gets you pumped up and like kind of scared and freaked out as well.
Well, and like you're saying, a lot of the handheld, it's done just over the shoulder of somebody too, and it really does put you in the grid of it. I actually think the choreographer for this may have done the choreography, for the Count of Monte Cristo not too long after that. I think that's what I was hearing in the director commentary, but I lost it a little bit there. But that first sword fight, I've seen people talk about it, people that know enough about fencing and close quarters combat to make comments on it. So this isn't my opinion at all. This is somebody else's presumably educated opinion, and I can validate a little bit just by looking, but you can see that there's thoughtfulness in the choreography, especially in that first sword fight. Ferreau is using a traditional fencing style. He has a good stance. He's got he's made himself a smaller target, and he's done these steps that you would take in a duel, where the mayor's son, while he does have a stance, it's a less refined stance, where he's making the appropriate swings that would be the real swings that you would do. Some of them are poorly executed, something that a bad swordsman would do. And since he loses, and he loses quickly, decisively, and you see Ferreau's never in any danger, it's clearly conveyed this guy sucked in comparison to what Ferreau can do. Then you see Ferreau and Hubert fight, and they're right on par. They also have different styles, though. They have Hubert at this point has a more refined, crisp style that seeks blade contact a lot more. That's one thing that I knew when I first saw it, but I've learned more about it since. He seeks blade contact more, that allows him to look for better attacks. And Ferreau makes less blade contact, doesn't seek it so much, and sort of forces his attacks. And they have real different styles being executed on screen as well. So it's another one of those times where you see not just the thoughtfulness in the people behind the camera, but the thoughtfulness with the actors to really adapt unique versions of sword fighting for each character. That way, it's not just two dudes, okay, well, you're going to swing at top and I'm going to hit it. Instead, it's I'm going to swing at your throat and you're going to stop it. But how would your character stop it? It's so much more layered than a lot of the other period pieces or sword fighting that might happen in other films. It's another one of those aspects that I think a lot of people might not even care about because they're involved in other parts of the story. But when you take that second or third watch through, you start to see how much care is in every frame, and it shows even down to the choreography.
Yeah, just the level of where their eyesight is, the way they decide to sort of arm, disarm, defend, offend with their weapons. It's like it all looked very just practical, and it kind of made sense. And I think and it also adds to those two characters as well, as you mentioned, just how layered it is, how they're very kind of in many ways kind of opposites, and how that lends to the fighting style. I think even in the true story, the Dubert character, he was, and this adds to the final duel, was actually a pretty good shot with the pistol, and they lend that strength to the final sequence there, where he gets the upper hand. And I also love how Fro just like immediately like, all right, whatever, this is the end of the
throws his guns. Well, you did it. Go ahead, shoot me.
Shoot me. I don't even, like, there's like a little bit, there's like an ounce of like a fair sort of sport to it as well. It's like, we are like fighting to the death here, but if things go wrong, if some sort of like outside force like stops this from happening, all right, I will succumb to that. We'll do this another time. I love that kind of like, there's a little bit of fair game coming to this as well, where, and I'll even add, like, this adds to, like, there's like little sprinkles of humor in this film as well. There's a sequence beginning of the second duel and Dubert, they're about to duel, and then like he has to stop. Oh, I gotta sneeze. Hold on one sec.
He has to sneeze. Oh, that's so funny because Farrow is like, "Oh, come on, you gotta sneeze right now," and puts his saber down and puts his hands on his shoulder. Come on,
Yeah.
that's so funny, dude.
I don't even know if this was intentionally funny, but there was a moment towards the third act where Farrow like raises a toast to the Emperor. He says like, "To his good health. I hope he wins many more victories and has a good life." And then the narrator, not 5 seconds later, decides to chime in and says, "Yeah, but after 100 days, Napoleon lost."
Napoleon, yeah, that's Ron Howard in Arrested Development is what that reminds me of. When a character's like, "Well, today's gonna be a good day," but today was not, in fact, a good day. That's another. It's perfect comedy, and I don't know if it's intended. It's timed perfect and everything.
Yeah, like the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme was like already rolling through my head at that point. Like, dude.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it because this is part of the film that it's missing that big war bit because of the budget. So to see the workaround of narration happen and not have it feel forced or ruin the film. I usually hate narration because it'll be Jeremy was using a snowball microphone. It's like, I see that. You don't have to tell me that. I see that. Shut up. Tell me the stuff I don't see. And this does only that. It doesn't tell you they're at a tavern in France. They're walking in the mud. It tells you last week this happened. You're at this week. Good luck. And then you could take off from there without needing to spend 30 seconds listening to somebody explain to you the scene you just saw or their motivation or whatever.
Yeah, no, the narration, it's interspersed in where it feels like it needs to be there. Like it is giving off the information that you would probably want out of just like what's going on right now in France, but again, very used sparingly is what I would say. It's used to that effect very well. As a historical piece too, as we watch it, the evolution that we see that these characters go through, their costuming changes over the time too. We actually see that sense of time go over the course of like, oh, this happened after 100 days. This happened after this many years. Their hairstyle changes. Harvey Keitel is wearing braids for a while, and I don't know why he didn't rock this look in more of these movies, but that he's in.
How is he still so macho with those braids like that? I thought that as soon as I saw him, I was like, this dude would still kick my ass, and I'd be okay with it. I like that you mentioned that too, because the passage of time in film is one of those areas that feels like it has a formula that nearly everybody adapts. It's been 10 years, so now the character has a beard. It's been 10 years, so now he has wrinkles. And instead, we're progressing a year, 2 years, 4 years, 10 years, and we're not just seeing character is older man, but the world around them has changed in some way. That you hear the events going on in some of the dialogue that's happening around them. You get that little bit of narration that's like, whoa, several years passed and military fashion changed. And although I think that's one time the narration was sort of lacking, you do see this isn't just a few weeks. This is supposed to be several years. And instead of just conveying that by being like, it's now later, they really took time to say, well, what happened in these periods? What changed? And how can we convey the passage of time in a better way than just showing man older now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you believe it. It all looks authentic. I know we keep talking about the realism in the movie, but like there was, I mean, even with a budget that's under $1 million, and that level of attention to detail is just... It's beautiful. It's wonderful to see that like on screen.
There's, when we talk about the simplicity and the minimalism, of the film, I'm really thinking about everything that I see now, and I think about films like what was this thing? The King.
Okay.
The Timothy Chalamet, however you say his last name, film that came out maybe 2 years ago, and they would like for you to think of this as a semi-gritty drama. And there are so many times where everybody on frame looks like a wimp and acts kind of like a bitch and has an annoying voice. And there's far too many times when I'm watching and I'm aware that it's the year 2019, 2018, whenever they filmed it, and I feel very disconnected. The Duelist is so immersive because even though it can't show you these massive battles that are going on, it pulls you into this small period, this small window into history, and takes you into these two guys' mindset, and you become, again, so immersed in their emotional attachment to this duel that, well, you don't have to pick out around the world and look around and find things. Oh yeah, this is from that period. You just absorb it. You just consume the period in this period piece. It's one of those things that I think is so lost in other films that coming back to it now makes me appreciate it even more in it. Even things, say, even like Robin Hood Men in Tights. The fact that they put all those characters on horses and actually made them ride. Suddenly, when you see stunt doubles on, Kit Harington or whatever his name is, as a stunt double riding a horse kind of fast, and we have Keith Carradine and Harvey Keitel riding those horses actually as fast as they can
to the death.
Actually, holy yeah. It really makes you appreciate the effort that goes into it so much more, and you can see the beauty, even more than you would in your first watch. Now, comparing it to modern period pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even with Keith Carradine as a character, I like how even amidst all of just the terror that this is raining on his life, and even the dark purpose that it is bringing in his life, he has these little moments where he's trying to form any sort of friendly relationship with this guy as well. There's that little moment, I don't know which battle it is, but they're in the dead of winter. They look terrible. They're almost decrepit looking. He offers him a drink, some booze, just to stay warm. And Harvey Keitel's like, "Nah, dude, we're still in this. We're not, you don't play nice with me."
Pistols next time. That's one of my favorite scenes in any film because there is a lot going on. I don't speak any other languages, so I can't fully interpret what that Cossack guy says. But for historical context, what this particular battle is Napoleon trying to invade Russia in winter, which is notoriously difficult. The old mythos is that Russia has a secret general, and his name is General Winter, and it's the winter that ruins armies all the time. And a big problem that Napoleon had was while he was going to fight the Russians, quote unquote, he was also needing to fight the Cossacks. And the Cossacks, while being Russian dudes, are just barbarians. The cold didn't bother them. Two dudes can be gone for a month just riding around in this white tundra of hell, and they'd be fine. They would eat animal fat and drink liquor, and that's how they would survive out there. And you actually see this remarkable historical accuracy in that a Cossack man shows up on a horse, has some type of fatty meat that he's eating while he's riding, which is exactly what you would see. He doesn't regard them as enemies necessarily because he's not tied to the empire that is Russia. He's not tied to Alexander and the Tsars. I think that's Alexander at that point. It might not be, but he's not tied to the Tsars. He's fighting at the territorial line, but he would just be fighting anybody, really. So he doesn't just see guys and think, oh, bad guys.
Yeah, they're on lunch break.
Yeah, they're on lunch break, exactly. He comes up and says something to the effect of, you're going to die out here. Do you want some food? And Harvey Keitel is like, no, I'm French. I don't know what this guy's saying. He's clearly Russian. He sees the other guys on horses, so he shoots him dead. And then, Hubert shoots off in the distance. They have that moment. They're standing by the wagon. He does offer him the drink, and he disregards it. And they're like, pistols next time. And as Harvey Keitel walks away, that's when Keith Carradine notices that one of the soldiers that is the dead bodies laid up against this wagon is just a frozen man who's still alive. His eyes and lips still twitching, consumed everything that just happened around him, incapable of speaking or moving. So all of this horrible stuff going on in this scene, the emotional conflict going on between them where they can't kill each other because they're deployed together right now, and they're still talking about their rivalry. But this part that demonstrates the horrors of war and the insanity that was Napoleon's plan to invade, it did eventually work, but to invade Russia in the winter, and it puts you back, not just, okay, these guys are fighting each other, but oh yeah, they're fighting a war. And Keith Carradine looks like ass. He's got snow and frost all over his eyelashes.
His nails are black.
Oh yeah, I forget. That's another detail. I could go on about subtleties in this film and the things that they did so just amazingly perfect in it. I can't say enough good things about any individual scene.
The nuances are all there to see. Like, I have to rewatch the movie multiple times just to really like catch up on just every little increment that that Ridley Scott or even everybody else on set was throwing into this film. It's also shot really well too. I should mention, like, again, I get like little Barry Lyndon sort of influences, a little bit of Kubrick in there. Just from a historical standpoint and just from how it's kind of shot. But it's like, it's a little bit lighter, but I don't mind that. It's like when you're watching a Kubrick film, you're in for, like, you gotta focus.
Right. Well, Barry Lyndon, it's filmed entirely by candlelight, and he had to get special NASA lenses to film it. In contrast, this film has such beautiful interior lighting. There's that scene where Keith Carradine's with, I don't remember her name, Marie, is that her name? The girl that is the prostitute, or eventually becomes the prostitute, whose life is ruined because of the duel. Early on, there's that scene where they're having sex, or they've just recently had sex inside of his home, and he's sat by some candles. Now they have the candle stick out so you can see, like, oh, it's lit by candlelight, but that's a yellow track light just hidden in frame, but being obscured in frame so you can't see it. And it's enough light that there's just huge shadows on the front part of them, and on their side they have this beautiful orange candlelight hue. And there's shots, it's just such a beautifully lit shot. And like you're saying, like Barry Lyndon, I'm thinking the same thing. This is, they said, how little light can we get in here but still illuminate huge parts of the frame? And instead of saying, well, I'll blast light through a window, they said, I'm going to put a little bit of light here. We're going to change its color and just roll with that. And it ends up being a demonstration of practicality and just, I don't know, just mindfulness of the craft. Not just saying, I need to light this scene, but I need to light this scene and get an emotion out of the lighting. I want harsh shadows, and I want this contrast of light and color. I hate to say it's so beautiful, it's so amazing every time, but there really is so much to dig into in this film on every level. As a writer, there's an amazing script there that ties everything up, doesn't leave any empty gaps. You understand every character.
Doesn't sequel bait.
Right, does not sequel bait. There's no room for it. At best, the sequel would be a minute, right? Ferreux shows up and Hubert goes, well, you broke the rules, bang, bang. Movie over.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I know. We can talk endlessly about how beautiful the film is, but really, it's like, it ties everything up into such a very, very, very tight knot that it's like, what can you say? Even like the imperfections. Like, I remember watching through sequences. Maybe it was after like the first duel, and Keith Carradine is having he's smoking his pipe with a fellow officer, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna offer you some wine," and then the next shot, like, he's already holding like a glass of red wine. Like, whoa, hold on, you didn't even show the pouring, But even then, it's like you can't like fault it for that, because it's just so carefully balanced. It's so paced out well that it's like, little things like, and when you know about the making of the film and just like all the restrictions that they were under, you kind of forgive it for that at the end of the day. It's just, I like those imperfections as well. And as a fellow filmmaker, it's like, I go through that stuff all the time. If we can be as practical as we can, and if we can do it as cheaply as we can, let's get it done,
Yeah, and there's that testament to Ridley Scott too, that right, if he had control of every film that he would have, or that he made, he would have 5 and 6 hour long films, because he's just a terrible editor. He wants everything that he shot to be in his film, and you don't get that restricted feeling in this film. It feels very much like most of what they filmed ended up being in there. It's obviously been cut down. It would be several hours long, but any film would be. But you don't feel like they lost huge chunks of scenes. You don't get that feeling where, let's say like The Goonies, where the movie's over, they go, man, wasn't that a crazy octopus fight? What the fuck are you talking about? What do you mean? We didn't see that shit. You don't get that missing moment. Everything that's referenced previously happened, or is at least alluded to enough early on that it's deeply enough in the past, or it's part of the arc somewhere. So there's there's quality in this film, and not just the cinematography or the acting, in the writing, in the performances of the background characters. Those 2 dudes that come to Hubert towards the end, they're like, who, tell us the names of your friends. I liked those guys. I really did. I like the idea, the whole logic behind this dueling culture really fucks with a lot of the stuff that the rest of us know. It's sort of in line, obviously, if you wanted to fight me and you had a couple friends, and I was we're at a party and you're with your 2 friends and you want to fight me, probably my 2 friends would want to jump in too. But could you imagine having a plan to fight a guy, and then also he's like, but my friends they're gonna referee the thing. You can't just come fight by yourself. My friends are gonna choreograph, they're gonna set up the whole fight, don't worry about it. It's so bizarre. And they just accept it because they've agreed to this duel. And you as the viewer buy it, because this whole world's been set up. You understand the rules of the duel. You understand that even though it's vague why they're dueling, at least like the base reason, you understand the commitment to this duel of honor. It's so like hard to find a film nowadays that really gets you into the characters, where they can make all of the decisions they make and you don't have a question for it. Not to harp on my hate of Marvel films, but you do come out of a Marvel film saying, why would this character do that? Why would that character do this? And the answer is, so the movie can happen. The Duelist doesn't have that. They only do stuff that makes sense for the moment. The movie doesn't rely on them having done it.
There's actual grounded purpose to what sort of happens here with these guys. And yeah, like you said, I mean, I just escaped another Marvel rant the other day over New Year's. It's like, but yeah, you're right though. It's like, what does this amount to? And it's like, you get it with the Duelists, a modern day action film or cape shit sort of movie. It's like, what's like, it feels almost like a waste of time, or it's not all well thought out. You also brought up like that octopus deleted scene from The Goonies. I forgot that was. It's like a faded like dream that like, oh yeah, did they just like put a boombox or whatever in its mouth and just swim away, or it's like a weird far off memory I have of that movie.
You can get people that haven't seen that film by being like, oh, remember the octopus scene? Yeah. And they'll go, oh yeah, totally. Absolutely. And you go, you haven't seen The Goonies. You just know that's a Walmart t-shirt. So that's how you demonstrate you're a movie fan. Okay, cool.
Yeah, put it next to your Iron Man shirt or whatever. Your
Ramones Iron Man t-shirts, and let me know how you're interested in all this high-tier art.
Yeah. But it is, as you put it though, it is like as classic as you get about what honor among men at the time meant. And what what this can take on an individual. The mere thought, like, oh, I have to fight this guy in the next few days. I could die. Like in a funny way, I'm trying to like imagine a prospect where you and I, once it's safe to like socially, no longer be socially distant, like we can just plan like a fun little duel that we can.
I'm into it. I'm down. We'll fight. Fun? I mean, I don't know how fun it'll be to die, but if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it real. I don't want to do this. We're nicked on the arm shit.
Somebody going T at one point, but yeah.
Time out, everybody.
Time out, everybody. One final question I kind of have is like, what do you make of Ridley Scott these days? Because I think we've sort of crowned this at this point in discussion that like this might be his magnum opus. Where has he gone film-wise since then? And is it time that he just sort of kicks the bucket and says, you know what, it's time to kind of move on? Because I've always looked at him as, at least nowadays, as kind of just this very stock studio director. Like, hey, we'll just hire Ridley Scott to direct this piece. He didn't write it. He didn't have much involvement, but like he'll direct it or whatnot. He's more of a producer guy. He's more of an industry sort of guy that I think that's maybe was his main goal, but like he got his roots with this film, and it shows that passion shows. Maybe it shows a little bit in Alien and maybe Blade Runner, but since then it's like I don't know where his career has really gone. It's gone just sort of more robotic way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think maybe American Gangster was his last like really, really good film.
Okay.
Gladiator. Yeah, Gladiator's like a top tier film, one of the better films. There's this thing where there's this story I remember reading a long time ago about this samurai, and he would always just walk around. He's a rodent. He just walks around, doesn't really have a home. People know about him. Whenever they find him, they want to fight him, and he kills everybody in one quick slice of his katana. He never has a match ever. And at some point, somebody asks him, why do you fight? And he says something to the effect of like, because no one has killed me yet. He just keeps going. He doesn't put a whole lot of effort into it. He just keeps going and doing what he does, and he still beats people. And I think Ridley Scott has the same thing kind of going on, where he doesn't really need to put a whole lot of effort into things. He could show up, do his thing, make a movie that's okay, I guess, get a paycheck and go. But his legacy getting up to there is that he's already done everything. He's fought all the guys that you thought would beat him, and he destroyed them super quick. So yeah, maybe the guys he's fighting now are low tier, but like he beat all the badasses before. He's already a legend in the game. He doesn't necessarily have a reason to pour his passion into another project. And he seems to me like the type of guy, and I've said this about other directors, who may have had a good chunk of his passion stolen by the film industrial complex, this massive monster that it eats up directors left and right and takes people that are passionate about their jobs and turns them into drones. And he has that sort of droneness to him now, where he feels like he's showing up and phoning it in, and it's a mix of those things. It's that he has already made some of the best films of all time and some of the most influential moments in film history, while also getting to that point in his career where he understands that he doesn't really need to do anything. Someone else has to. Someone else has to come along and beat him. Someone else has to make, Denis Villeneuve has to make a better version of what he made, or something like that, right? He's waiting to be usurped rather than demonstrating that he's the king.
Yeah, like almost as if he just kind of likes to work at this point and maybe make money. But absolutely, I would say, while some of his more future efforts don't quite stick around as long as his older stuff, he's staying in the biz and doing it as long as he can, and hasn't seemed to have any real confrontational moments with other big studio peeps. I don't know who like he would be working with, but even I submitted video to his he's doing Life in the Day 2020 documentary. He's producing that, at least, and I hope it makes it in the footage. It's really embarrassing, but we'll see if it makes it.
Oh, interesting. That would be cool. I do want to see The Last Duel. That's that film that he has with Adam Driver and what I think isn't Matt Damon in it too? They're gonna have a fight. That looks really cool. I liked Prometheus. There's that issue where, especially if you're somebody that has maybe done some action in your films before, that you get brought in to do things like Robin Hood and stuff. And, I do feel like he's one of those guys that has had a good portion of his passion sucked away, but also seeing the modern trends, do you think that a 1970s to mid 80s Ridley Scott even fits in the movie, like movie making, movie watching realm? I feel like that guy making a Blade Runner now, or even something like G.I. Jane, it's gonna be looked at, perceived differently because of the modern context of filmmaking. And he might actually, if given the reins, it might fail. And I don't know that he would want to, quote unquote, fail, right? I mean, Martin Scorsese can put out The Irishman and it failed, quote unquote, right? By movie standards, by most movie standards, it did poorly because the standard is really bad. So maybe it's a thing where he just doesn't even see the point in putting out something that's a hugely passionate project. Doing Black Hawk Down 2 Electric Boogaloo is probably more in style than finding something similar to the Duellists to do now, because people want to see machine gun blow up action and they'll pay to see that, where you and I might watch his art house film about, two dudes that are going to duel to the death, they're secretly in love with each other or whatever. It's $20 from you and I, right? He made $20 because Jeremy and Jerry went and saw it, versus $20 million because he blew up a Huey helicopter and everybody thought The Rock jumped out of it or whatever.
Yeah. Hashtag cancel Ridley Scott. No, but excellent points. I mean, I think I'm optimistic about an audience that's sort of growing to see much more of his older artistic stuff and see his more modern stuff for what they are. And, you bring up stuff like Robin Hood, completely forgettable, trash. Prometheus, I like that you bring that up. I actually liked that film too. It's got so many flaws, but I do actually like I know we could go on a whole other conversation about it, but like the battle between like science and religion and how that dabbles with like the creation of man and things like that. I think there's good things to kind of be said there. And I like it when Ridley Scott, like, once in a while kind of like has those much more intuitive instincts to want to say like, hey, I want to tell a really much more deeper sort of story here, and then the studio will like tap his shoulder and say like, yeah, but you got to put in this action scene too. Like, okay, fine. You see that balance, and you just kind of see it for what it is. I guess as a close, I know you would probably recommend The Duellists to a lot of people, but how would you pitch The Duellists to people if they seem like they're curious but aren't sure if they want to go into it?
Well, think of it like any gang film, right? Where the whole film you're watching these two gangs fight each other and you're really interested in seeing where it goes, but the two gangs are two French guys and they have a whole line of honor and respect they have to go through. The pitch is just, it's a movie about two dudes that sword fight 5 times over the course of several years and fucking hate each other. And it's hard to pitch it better than that, because that's what happens, and that sounds amazing. If you told me I have this movie where these dudes just keep fighting each other, why do they fight? Because they started fighting and they can't not fight until the fight is over. All right, I'll watch that. That's the whole, what is that, Rocky 4? Okay.
Hell yeah. No, I would say the same. If you want to see a film that really gets into the deep psychological, mental roots of what two men who are going up against each other over the course of many years, just over the most pettiest of feuds, like over the littlest of mistakes, it's like, yeah, you're in for a ride. You're gonna stick with it the whole movie, and it's a good just 100 minutes runtime. You're gonna have a good time, I think.
To just one thing that I wanted to mention is that we might see films now that want to talk about, we'll say, quote unquote, toxic masculinity, that could never convey that emotion better, or that idea better than The Duelist has, because it establishes that this is an extremely masculine idea. None of the women take part in it, and the two women in the film think it's fucking stupid. And they say that a bunch of times. Like, that's, well, the one that knows about it thinks it's fucking stupid. The other one is completely kept in the dark about it, right? Hubert lies to her and it's like, I had to work late, I'm sorry. Which is another comedy line. She's, where have you been? I had to work late. He's fighting a man to the death. There's these, kind of lost my train of thought a little bit there, but it is, I lost my train of thought.
The toxic masculinity.
Right. Yeah. It does delve into issues that people, mostly men, even have nowadays in sticking to their prideful ways, having some sense of honor that maybe other people don't necessarily understand, or that might not matter to somebody else, and staying true to it, although it can be a good thing to be convicted, can be a bad thing when you see it start impacting the rest of the world and the people around you. Sometimes you need to, close that chapter of your life to better enrich the lives of the people around you. And with those efforts now can feel like someone talking down to you as the viewer, saying, "Oh, you silly man, isn't it terrible to be a guy and have pride and honor?" Where in this case, it doesn't feel like it's somebody talking down. It's just somebody working through the different emotions that come with it. Maybe you come out of it and you think, well, maybe these aspects of people's perception of masculinity are negative, but look at how it can work in a positive way. Look, and now I understand these aspects of this kind of mindset. There's modern arguments to be had about the way people subscribe to the idea of honor and respect and dignity inside of this film that's about these two dudes that have a very outdated version of honor, respect, and dignity. And I think that if you're going to watch the film just once, you're going to watch it and enjoy it. If you're going to watch the film more than once, you're going to watch it and really start to interact with those ideas as they unfold. That's end of rant.
Yeah, no, I'm going to avoid repeating everything you just said because I have the same pretty much point. But the whole what that all meant, especially at that time. If you come at this film knowing what it just was for that time period, you will get a lot more out of it, and you'll find it much more enriching too. In modern day, if you can't even slightly sympathize with Dubert, then you might be a sociopath, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah, you might be insane.
You have kept me at your beck and call for 15 years. I shall never again do what you demand of me. By every rule of single combat, from this moment, your life belongs to me. Is that not correct? Then I shall simply declare you dead. In all of your dealings with me, you will do me the courtesy to conduct yourself as a dead man. I have submitted to your notions of honor long enough. You will now submit to mine.
I would say that's a good way to close it. I think you nailed everything about the movie very well, and I got to thank you for really kind of introducing it to me to finally watch it in 2020 and get a good visceral experience out of what Ridley Scott was doing. And it was great. Thanks for all the input, man.
Hey, I love coming on the show with you. I love the conversations. I thank you actually for watching the film. This is one of those films I keep telling people to watch and check out. They never watch it. So thanks for watching it and talking to me about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's been on my radar for so long. Glad I finally watched it. Love it when American actors are playing French guys. Anything you would like to plug, by the way, for the listeners? I always forget that.
Oh yeah, you probably want to follow me on Twitch at Bloom Online. That's where I am all the time. So if you're listening now and you think that guy isn't too irritating, that's where you can find me.
His Twitch is blooming, just so for those of you out there. No, it's doing really well.
Thank you.
And you can find me at Film Chart Productions on Facebook. You can also follow me at Jeremobi on Twitter. And you can follow me at Jeremobi on Letterboxd, where I continue to do random film reviews, or at least keep up with my watch list and what I'm watching. Thank you all for listening. Thanks, Jerry, for coming on again. And hope we get to do another one in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Good night.